In Switzerland, the Vice-president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, successfully concluded her visit to the United Nations agency, in which he denounced a policy of unilateral economic aggressions that the United States applies to more than 30 countries. In Guatemala, truckers' protest keeps a border crossing with El Salvador blocked. Protesters demanded that the government of Alejandro Yamatei take actions against high food prices. The Russian government announced on Friday that all trading energy resources with China will begin to be paid for in the national currency of both countries. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Ana Marrero from the teleSUR headquarters in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. And in Switzerland, the Vice-president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, successfully concluded her visit to the United Nations agency, in which she denounced the policies of unilateral economic aggressions that the United States applies to more than 30 countries. At the end of the agenda, the Venezuelan vice-president held a meeting with the director of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, Rebecca Greenspan, where she denounced the economic board that diversified the exports of the South American nation. She also met with the director of the United Nations Office, Tatiana Volovaya, with whom she discussed the challenges facing multilateralism and Caracas' willingness to continue promoting its finally points out that in spite of the resistance of the people, this does not mean that there is no damage due to the effect of the economic blockade against Venezuela.
The resilience of our people to overcome victoriously. But that does not mean that there is no blockade. That does not mean that unilateral coercive policies violate international law and have an impact on national life and on the life of our people. So it has been a very important, very fruitful visit to the United Nations in Geneva. And well, we continue our trip and we continue with our agenda.
The Venezuelan official also points out that she proposed to the United Nations agency to incorporate the issue of the impact of the sanctions to the work area of the organization.
Approximately more than 30 countries are victims of economic blockade. We are victims of coercive and unilateral measures. It is something that the United Nations agency may not be very used to. They are beginning to know about it. Well, Cuba has been under blockade for 6 decades. Countries like Iran and we are now living a situation that has been more intense. It has been more aggressive, and we have asked the United Nations system to also visualize this dimension that should be incorporated in the work. In fact, we have asked for it in the Office of the High Commissioner in Caracas. We have asked to be incorporated in the areas of work.
Colombia's Congress approved the tax reform bill promoted by President Gustavo Petro aimed at guaranteeing resources from social programs and providing stability to public finances. The tax reform proposal was approved with 63 votes in favor and 18 votes against. The bill declared its final hurdle after the passing for the House of Representatives with 122 votes in favor and 27 against. Some amendments were made to secure a consensus, but the central aspect of the proposal remains largely intact. The bill creates a new wealth tax targeting people from over $500,000 in assets, progressively increasing rates up to 1.5% of their fortunes yearly. The energy and mining sector, though, will also be taxed. In Peru, an airline caught fire on Friday moments before takeoff at Lima International Airport with destination Ayacucho. Passengers were evacuated in time and no casualties were reported. Reported by the Peru 21. Jorge Chavez Airport authorities stated that there was an accident on the runway and that they are investigating the fact to determine how the fire occurred. Apparently, the plane would have collided with a service vehicle that was on the runway. After the accident, flight wardens and departures were momentarily suspended. In Guatemala, truckers' protest keeps a border crossing with El Salvador blocked. Protesters demand that the government of Alejandro Yamatei take actions against high fuel prices. The closure of highways and border crossings have been worsened since they started last Monday, November 14. They explain that these actions are a measure of pressure on the government to reduce the price of all products and the basic food basket, which are affecting all items in the country. Local media reported around 300 trucks will remain detained at the border crossing until they get answers from the executive. We'll take a short break now, but remember, you can follow us on our TikTok account as teleSUR English, which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Stay tuned for more news. Welcome back to From the South. The Russian government announced on Friday that all trade in energy resources with China will be to be paid for international currency of both countries. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak declared that Moscow and Peking will start trading Russian gas at a parity basis in yuan and rubles. The official points out that the two countries increased the volume of energy traded by 64% in economic terms and by 10% in physical terms. The statements follow a meeting between Novak and Chinese Vice-president Han Shen within the framework of the meeting of the Russian-Chinese Intergovernmental Commission on Energy Cooperation aimed at devising mechanisms to reduce dependence on dollar and exposure to the West's coercive measures against their countries. In Moscow, the government of Russia and Cuba held the 29th session of the Intergovernmental Commission for Economic and Scientific Technological Cooperation. Russian Vice President Dmitry Chernyshchenko and Cuban Prime Minister Ricardo Cabrizas led a session where they discussed Cuba's main lines of economic and social development. They focus on areas such as power generation, transportation, education, agricultural, public health, science, technology, culture, and tourism. They also discussed the international situation was also made, especially the issue that most affected the development of both countries, like the coercive measures on Russia and the commercial blockade on Cuba imposed by the U.S. Swedish prosecutors confirmed on Friday that the explosion of the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipeline in September were an act of sabotage. Mantim Junkivis, the prosecutors in charge of the case, explained that the investigations carried out by Baltic Sea showed explosive residues in several of the objects collected. Acknowledging that the preliminary study is very complex and extensive, he confirmed his confidence that the outcome investigation can reveal a suspect for this crime. The Swedish official also assured that the cooperation of authorities in other countries with Sweden is excellent. Poland's government denounced pressure from Kiev. The administration of Volodymyr Zelensky wants to be part of the investigation into the responsibility of the launching of the missiles that hit Polish territory. Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs Dmytro Kuleba demanded prompt access to the investigation. On Thursday, the Polish authorities informed that they will allow Kiev to know the process on the investigation but not be part of the process. President Volodymyr Zelensky himself confirmed that the missiles that killed 2 people was launched by Russian forces. However, both Warsaw, Washington, and even NATO ratified that it belongs to Ukraine. The Ukrainian president has moderated his speech but insists on intervening in the investigation. Russia's defense ministry chief spokesman Igor Konashenko confirmed on Friday that Russia's armed forces carried out a strike with the use of high-precision long-range air, sea, and land weapons on Ukrainian targets of military management. The strikes were also performed on defense and industrial complex and on fuel and energy infrastructures. According to Konashenko, as a result of this strike, an arsenal with artillery supplied by Western countries and prepared for sending to Ukrainian troops was destroyed.
In November, Russian armed forces carried out a strike with the use of high-precision long-range air, sea and land-based weapons on Ukrainian objects of military management, on defense and industrial complex, and on fuel and energy infrastructure related to it. Goals of strikes have been achieved. All missiles hit the necessary targets. Missile production facilities have been struck as a result of the attack. Arsenal with artillery supplied by Western countries and prepared for sending to Ukrainian troops has been destroyed. The deployment of reserves from Ukrainian armed forces and the delivery of foreign weapons to combat areas have been disrupted.
The Presidential Summit of Leaders of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum kicked off in Thailand with a focus on promoting sustainable development, facilitating trade and investment in the region. At the start of the multilateral event, Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha called on the leaders to address the economic effects left by the pandemic, among other global issues such as the climate crisis around the world. The Thai president called on his counterparts for greater cooperation to prevent the crisis and a transmission of a new way of life. During the conclave, the president of China, Xi Jinping, declared that the role of Asian-Pacific region as the most important and affirmed that in recent years it has become the main engine in a global growth. We have more news coming up after this financial break, so don't go away. Welcome back. The Central Command of the U.S. Armed Forces confirmed this Friday that one of its military bases installed in Syrian territory was attacked by rockets. In a communique, the entity specified that the Green Village base in the province of Eastern was bombed on Thursday night. There are U.S. troops and members of the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces sponsored by Washington. The text also reported that the missile attacks did not cause any loss of lives or property. The attacks against these enclaves in the Syrian territory have increased in the last months, while the popular reaction to any form of occupation of the Syrian lands is increasing. Since 2014, the United States government has maintained some 15 illegal military enclaves, mostly located near the oil and gas fields. Syria's local tribes and clans have strongly protested against foreign forces presented without official permission on indigenous territories and have called for popular resistance, including our resistance against the foreign occupiers. In this regard, the Syrian government has repeatedly denounced this illegal presence and asserted that Washington's actions in the territory encourage terrorist activity. In Palestine, a fire that broke out in the northern Gaza Strip killed at least 21 people in one of the deadliest incidents in recent years. According to Palestinian authorities, the blaze erupted on the third floor of a three-story building in the Abaliyah refugee camp. The civil defense in Gaza attributed the cause of the fire to gasoline that was being stored in the building, although it was not immediately cleared how the gasoline engined. Gaza, which is under the current Israel blockade, faces a severe energy crisis. Therefore, people often store cooking gas, diesel, and gasoline in homes in preparation for winter. On Thursday, the World Health Organization said Uganda will receive the Sudan-stirred Ebola trial vaccine next week as the East African country struggles with containing the spread of the deadly disease. Local authorities will evaluate the efficacy of the 3 trial vaccines, which includes Oxford from Britain, Savin and Merck from the United States. According to the World Health Organization's representative to Uganda, the cantata of confirmed cases and health workers will be the first to receive the vaccine. The government of France announced the suspension of development aid to Mali and tensions with a military junta that controls the country since the 2020 coup. According to the French diplomatic sources quoted by the newspaper Le Monde, the government announced the suspension because of the alleged deployment of the Russian group Vanguard in Mali territory. The Southern Coordination, made up by the 35 NGOs active in Mali, sent a letter warning of measures from the activity suspended that will benefit the population in poverty. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel continued his official visit to Algeria with important achievements in economic, commercial, financial, and cooperation matters. The Cuban head of state discussed bilateral relations with his Algerian counterpart, Abdelrahim Touboué, and agreed on the importance of their resumption. Meanwhile, President Touboué stated that his nation will restore energy and fuel supplies to Cuba and donate a solar plant to help the island tackle power cuts and food shortages. He also vowed to cancel interest payment on Cuban debt. Miguel Díaz-Canel's visit to Africa's biggest gas exporter is the first stop on a tour that will also include Russia, Turkey, and China. With that story, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on our socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English and from the South, I'm Ana Marrero, and thank you for watching.